Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Gamescript. Looking at the Sunday night game between the New York Jets and the Las Vegas Raiders. They're playing in Las Vegas, and we have a 35.5-point total with the New York Jets as 1.5-point favorites. So we got home dogs tonight, and we have an interesting situation with the Las Vegas Raiders. They fired their entire coaching staff since the last time we took a look at this team. And last week, they ended up winning an emotional game. But this week, reality checks in again, and they are up against a very difficult defense. And we have some injuries on their offensive line. They're missing Colton Miller, their left tackle, who is a major part of their offensive line. And it is a rookie quarterback going against a very difficult defense. And we could be looking at kickers and defenses in the captain tonight. I'll get into it right after this. Hey, what's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching Gamescript. This is a show where I break down these island games, such as Sunday Night Football, which we got going on tonight, for DraftKings Showdown content. We're going to build some lineups here and take a look at the player pool. And we're dealing with a game that is a 35.5-point total being played in Las Vegas. It's the New York Jets versus the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Jets are 1.5-point favorites, which just kind of goes to show how bad the Las Vegas Raiders have been this year. We are dealing with a rookie quarterback in Aiden OConnell going against Zack Wilson, the quarterback of the New York Jets. Aiden OConnell, of course, took over for Jimmy Garoppolo because Jimmy Garoppolo was just awful. And Aiden OConnell, there's a lot of promise with him amongst Las Vegas Raiders fans, but amongst the rest of us, he just looks like a sloppy rookie. And last week, he had 8 points in his game against the New York Giants. Easy matchup there. They ended up crushing the Giants 30-6, mainly. I guess it was a defensive output and a Josh Jacobs type of game against the Giants last week. And the other game where Aiden OConnell started, he had 12, almost 13 points against the Chargers. So a little bit of mixed results there, but he faces a much, much tougher matchup tonight against the New York Jets, a team who specializes in, just dominating the pass game of their opponents. And the Jets are going to be a very difficult matchup tonight, and we can dig into that matchup with this player pool. Before I get into that, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel and hit like on the video. Looking for about 15 likes on this one, and going to take a look at this player pool right now. We got Devonte Adams is the highest priced guy on the slate. He's got that difficult matchup against the Jets. The Jets secondary is just, dominant. They just stop just about everybody. And Devonte Adams has a rookie quarterback throwing to him, which makes sense to bump down the projections for Devonte Adams tonight. Adams last week had 7 DraftKings points against the Giants. He had 2 against the Lions the week before that. And other than that, he had 13 the week before. He's just been really bad this year. Not sure what happened to him exactly, apart from maybe he's just not happy in his situation. And, Josh McDaniels was just an awful coach, which we know. But Adams had a great season last year with McDaniels. Adams came to the Raiders to play with his friend Derek Carr, who got traded by the Raiders to the New Orleans Saints, or not even traded. He got released by the Raiders and he joined the New Orleans Saints. So, just a rough spot for Devonte Adams playing in a situation that he's just not happy with, and I think it's affecting his playing. Breece Hall is the next highest price guy, Brees is set up to have a nice game against the right. The Raiders have been giving up 25 points, DraftKings points a game to the running back position. So that positions Brees Hall to be a nice captain option tonight in a game where we expect the Jets to try to run the ball as much as possible and keep the decision making out of Zack Wilson's hand as much as possible. We're looking at a game that's going to be situation where they're going to want the defense to to be the game, to be the part of the team that decides this game, not the offense. And they're going to try to keep that ball out of Zack Wilson's hands as much as possible in this game. And Brees Hall is the guy that they're probably going to try to lean on the offense tonight. Everybody else, of course, is going to be thinking that same way, which puts Brees Hall at the highest owned captain tonight, along with Josh Jacobs. Both those guys are in the same situation. The teams are going to be leaning heavily on the run, and each of those guys has about a 19% projection at the captain spot. Josh Jacobs, of course, is the guy that the Raiders are going to want to lean on, with Aiden OConnell being a rookie against a very difficult pass defense. And yeah, Josh Jacobs, they're going to be missing their left tackle, like I mentioned at the top of the show. And it's not just any left tackle. It's like the third highest graded PFF tackle. And he is, just been dominant this year. Really good left tackle. So it's not just any left tackle. It's the left tackle. And it's not good for the Raiders playing with a rookie receiver, rookie quarterback, which is going to make the Jets defense all the more interesting, as if they weren't already in this matchup. And Josh Jacobs, he's going to be carrying the load tonight. Last week, after they had that firing of Josh McDaniels, the coach of the Raiders, the interim coach, has come out and said that they want to let Josh Jacobs play the way that he plays best. So they catered the running style to Josh Jacobs last week. He ended up getting 22 points against the Giants. The Jets are not the best against the run game this year. They've been allowing 26 DraftKings points a game to the running back position, which is, like a little bit more than the Raiders have been allowing. And Josh Jacobs just finds himself in a good spot tonight in a situation where he's going to be leaned on heavily, and he's got the matchup that he needs. Problem with that is the situation with the quarterback this week. They're going to know that they're going to be leaning on Jacobs, so look for them to put a heavy focus on stopping Josh Jacobs tonight. Same on the Raiders side. They're going to be looking to stop Brees Hall tonight. So those guys should get the most volume. Whether or not they'll be effective, we'll find out. So Garrett Wilson is the next highest price guy. Wilson has been doing well despite his quarterback situation, which is great, because last week he scored 14 DraftKings points. He scored 20 DraftKings points the week before that, 17 the week before that. This is all with Zack Wilson. So that gives a kind of a testament to how good of a wide receiver Garrett Wilson is. And as far as what the Raiders have allowed to the wideouts, 8.5 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. They're more susceptible in the slot, where they're giving up 18.5 DraftKings points. Garrett Wilson aligns from the slot about 27% of the time. Other than that, he's on the outside. We'll take a look at some of the performances by wide receivers against that Raiders defense so far this season. Wan'Dale Robinson had 14.5 points against them. Amon-Ra St. Brown had about 20 points against the Raiders. DJ Moore had 13 points against the Raiders. No one on New England did anything. The Packers did not do anything against them. Keenan Allen had 12 points. Calvin Austin of the Steelers had 15 points, but George Pickens, had 11 points. Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. Diggs only had 14 points against the Raiders. Davis stepped up and had 21 points. And Cortland Sutton is the other wideout that scored only 13 points against the Raiders. So that gives you kind of an idea of what you can project for Garrett Wilson. If you want to go heavier on him, you can project him over, maybe 15 points, 15 DraftKings points. I think that would be a fair estimate for how much he can score tonight. But if you want to go a little bit heavier than that and put him in the captain, I think he'll be a pretty low-owned captain tonight. He looks like he's about the fourth highest owned, right under Devonte Adams. So Garrett Wilson does not have one of the higher captain ownerships in that 19% that we see for the running backs, but Garrett Wilson is up there. But starting him in captain will get you different from the field because most people are going to be starting those running backs. So Garrett Wilson is interesting tonight. Jacoby Meyers is in a situation where Josh McDaniels brought him in, and now Josh McDaniels is gone. We don't know what that's going to change for him. Last week, he only had 5 targets, but they didn't really throw the ball too much last week because they were having success running the ball, and they took that huge lead. But he still managed to get 13.5 DraftKings points last week. Faces his difficult defense. Both sides of the secondary on the Jets side are really good, and that puts Jacoby Meyers and Devonte Adams in rough spots tonight. So going to be tough to pull the trigger on any of these wide receivers on the Raiders side. Zack Wilson is not that good. He's been an awful quarterback this year, and kind of thrust into that starting role when Aaron Rodgers went out in week 1, and completely unexpected for Zack Wilson. But he's been doing like a admirable job. He's kept the team in playoff contention. As far as DraftKings points, though, he has not been doing very good. He scored 9 last week, 14 the week before that, 11 the week before that, 9 the week before that, 20 against Kansas City. That's his best week. But, the rest of his weeks are pretty much along the lines of what I just read. So we're facing against a Raiders team that is good against the quarterback. The Raiders have been giving up only 14 points a game to that quarterback position. If we look at some of the similar quarterbacks that have faced off against the Raiders, Tommy DeVito had 11 points. Tyler Bagent had 13 points against the Raiders. Mac Jones, only 7 points. Jordan Love, only 8 points. The rest of the quarterbacks that they've faced have been pretty good. I would put Zack Wilson probably in that, like 9-10 point range if I was projecting him for tonight, based on his history and based on the history of opposing teams facing the Raiders. On top of that, the Jets are in a similar situation to the Raiders. They haven't lost anyone in the same vicinity of Colton Miller, but the Jets are down a couple offensive linemen in Dwayne Brown, I believe is doubtful, and Billy Turner. One of those guys is doubtful with a finger injury, but it's looking like both those guys will be missing, and that puts Zack Wilson in a rough spot because they have been changing that offensive line all year. That offensive line was so bad in week 1, it took Aaron Rodgers out for the season with a Achilles tear because they couldn't defend him. And they basically the reason that Zack Wilson is the starting quarterback. And Zack Wilson, you watch him play, the dude never has time to do anything. He's got defenders on his ass like instantly every time he touches the ball. And we're in a matchup tonight against Max Crosby. So it's just going to be more pressure on Zack Wilson, and the offensive line cannot guard. So look for Zack Wilson to be under duress all night. It's going to make it difficult to get the ball to Garrett Wilson. It's going to make it difficult to get the ball to anybody. It's going to be difficult to move the ball at all tonight. Fortunately for him, he's got a good defense that is going to hopefully put him in good field position with that rookie quarterback on the other side. But look for Zack Wilson to score 10 points or below tonight. Contrarian thinking would have him maybe having a successful game, but that's hard to envision with this banged up offensive line facing off against Max Crosby, and they are playing in Vegas. So you got Max Crosby playing at home in Vegas. So we got Aiden OConnell next. He is 8,400. Just really bad spot for Aiden OConnell. Just I've gone over that. Not looking at Aiden OConnell to make any sort of an impact tonight. He's in a very similar situation to Zack Wilson, where he's just going to be hoping that his defense and Josh Jacobs are able to put them in scoring position. Allen Lazard has been awful this year. Last week, he was dropping passes left and right. Zack Wilson is desperately trying to get playmakers on his side, and Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb, these scrubs that came in to help out Aaron Rodgers, are just useless without Aaron Rodgers throwing to them. And Allen Lazard has just been really bad. And part of that is Zack Wilson, but most of that is just because he's just not a good player, and he's been dropping balls left and right. Jimmy Garoppolo, we pass through all these backups. Tyler Conlin is in an interesting situation tonight. Scored 12, almost 13 DraftKings points in that good matchup for him last week against the Chargers, and he scored 11 points against Denver. So he has upside, especially in a slate like this where I'm envisioning very low scoring and very low DraftKings points getting into the optimal. The matchup as far as the points are, Vegas is giving up 10 DraftKings points a game. So apart from the slot, which Vegas is giving up 19 DraftKings points a game to, Conlin probably has the best matchup as far as the pass catchers for the Jets. So keep that in mind with Conlin. You don't want to jam him in by any means, but he's a guy that you can keep in your player pool. Daniel Carlson has not done a whole lot this year either. He's had a couple big weeks. He had 14 points last week against the Giants. He had 13 against New England, but other than that, he hasn't done too much. But he is in a situation tonight where the defense has the potential to get them into scoring position or good field position. And the matchup with Josh Jacobs is good. They should be able to at least move the ball and hopefully, be in field goal range a few times tonight, which is all you probably need to get in an optimal tonight. So I like keeping Daniel Carlson in my player pool. Kickers and defenses, honestly, tonight are captain worthy, and I think especially the defenses tonight. But yeah, kickers are in play too for the captain tonight, especially if you want to get different. Looking at those, probably about 60% of captain ownership is going to be spread between 4 players, and that is Devonte Adams, Breece Hall, Josh Jacobs, and Garrett Wilson. That is going to leave 40% to be spread amongst all the other players, leaving the Raiders defense and the Jets defense as lower owned than they should be tonight. The Raiders have been really good this year. They're carrying the team basically. Last week they had 19 points against inferior offense in the Giants. They had 13 points against Detroit, playing in Detroit. Max Crosby was playing at his hometown that night. I highlighted them on that show that I did that week for the showdown. Green Bay they had 12 points against Jordan Love. So it gives you an idea of what they can do against these bad quarterbacks. Only had 4 points against Chicago. They were playing at Chicago, and only, they had 9 points against Mac Jones, which is pretty good. Like, that's good enough to get them in an optimal tonight. I would probably bump them up to 10 points, 10, 11 points, and, leave them in as a captain option for sure. Zerline, I envision the Jets being in scoring position more often than the Raiders tonight, just based on, Zack Wilson. He's bad, but he's got more experience than Aiden OConnell. He's year 3 of starting now. And last year, he started the entire season, except for a few games. And then, this year he's been, he's just more war ready. Zack Wilson is more war ready to get his team into field goal range than Aiden OConnell is. So I prefer Zerline over Carlson. And as far as Zerline's points, you can see he's had a couple games where he had 14, 18, and 11. Used to be called Legatron. That's his nickname. So he's got a good distance with his kicks. 8 points against the Chargers last week and 7 points against the Giants. They're going to be playing for field goals tonight, so expect Legatron to have a decent showing tonight, probably. So keep him in your captain pool tonight. Jets D has been good this year, obviously. Against inferior opponents, they have 8 points against the Giants. They scored 18 points against Denver and 20 points against Buffalo, who's obviously not an inferior opponent, but they've shown up this year. They've had some big weeks. 11 points against Philly too. So they've had some big weeks for sure. And the thing that we're hoping for tonight, I don't think that the Raiders are going to be throwing the ball too much. So we're hoping for, sack fumbles, just fumble recovery touchdowns and stuff like that mainly. But they should be sacking Aiden OConnell all night, and it's just a good matchup, especially with missing that Colton Miller on the offensive line. Just look for the Jets defense to eat tonight, and they are a excellent captain option tonight in this matchup. Dalvin Cook, not interested there. Mike Meyer, a little bit interested there in keeping him in the player pool. He hasn't really done much, 2 targets the last couple weeks, but the matchup is not horrible with the Jets allowing 12 points a game to the tight end position, and rookie quarterbacks might rely a little bit more on the tight end, although they haven't been using him much. But McDaniels is out now, so they got a whole new offense. So we'll see what happens with Michael Meyer, but keep him in your player pool. He's got a decent matchup. Good guy to probably sprinkle in a couple lineups. Michael Carter's the other guy I'm interested in when we go lower. Last week, when the Jets were trailing, Michael Carter came in over Dalvin Cook, and he had 6 receptions. Came out of nowhere in that last quarter. I think he ended up in the optimal lineup, but goes to show, like, he scored 8.5 DraftKings points in that game and ended up, being a key piece of that game. Randall Cobb, I think he was a healthy scratch last week. Randall Cobb, I'm not interested in, but the guy I am interested in is this guy Gibson. Gibson is the guy who kind of took over that slot role. He had when this guy gets the ball, he looks explosive. He, in that first game against Buffalo, I believe he was the one that returned that kick for the game-winning touchdown at the end of the game. Gibson has flashed this year. He's been very limited in his opportunities, but the last 2 weeks, he had 2 targets last week and 1 target the week before that. In the 2 targets last week, he had 32 points. His long catch was 19. So it wasn't like a fluky catch. It was like 19-yard catch and a 11-yard catch. And the Raiders are vulnerable to the slot receiver. They have been giving up 19 points a game, DraftKings points a game for the slot. And as far as a DVOA matchup, he has the best DVOA matchup in this entire between the wide receivers of both teams tonight. So Xavier Gibson, keep him in mind for tonight. He is only $200. You're not going to need the salary relief, but he's a good guy to plug in to leave money on the table because most people are going to be gravitating towards the known entities. So look for Xavier Gibson tonight to potentially do something. CJ Uzomah, I'm not really interested there. Not really interested in any other of these cheap guys, really. I don't see anyone else that I would be interested in. So let's go ahead and build a lineup. We'll start with a chalkier build. I think that Breece Hall is going to be kind of the go-to guy as far as the captain builds tonight. So if we go with Breece Hall in the captain, we probably could put him or Jacobs. Both those guys will be popular. Josh Jacobs, you're going to want to try to get as much as him tonight. I would put the Jets D in this lineup, and I would probably put the Raiders D. But if we're going for more of a chalky type of build, the 4-2 builds on either side are going to be about the same ownership. So they're both going to be, pretty popular, about a quarter of the ownership on each of those types of builds. So you're not getting different by building 4-2 tonight. So, I might try to go with Garrett Wilson. I just have more trust in Zack Wilson getting the ball to Garrett Wilson than Aiden OConnell getting the ball to any of his receivers. It's going to put us with a 4K per remaining spot. I mentioned I liked Zerline. Going to put Zerline in there. He's with 3,700. The options there. Meyer. Meyer is probably the guy that the optimizers would push to get in the lineup. Let's see. I'm going to see who the popular scrubs are. Gibson is actually, pretty popular. Maybe we put Gibson in that one. Like you could put Hunter Renfro. Now Hunter Renfro is interesting. I forgot to go over him. Hunter Renfro and Trey Tucker are kind of interesting because a lot of the complaints of Josh McDaniels were, where the hell is Hunter Renfro? Why isn't Hunter Renfro being used? He was a solid Raider for the Derek Carr years. Like he was a major part of the team. Like everybody liked him. And all of a sudden, Josh McDaniels just rendered him useless. Last week, he had 3 targets. He had 32 yards on those 3 targets. He scored 5 DraftKings points, but it was the highest output of the year. I would not be surprised if the team makes an effort to integrate Hunter Renfro into that offense a little bit more. And it's not the best matchup tonight. The slot points against the Jets this year they've only been giving up 7 points, DraftKings points a game to the slot position. But Hunter Renfro on just a big picture situation, like I would not be surprised to see him get integrated more into the offense now that they got rid of McDaniels. The head coach, interim head coach right now of the Raiders, just seems more interested in getting back to like a team culture situation. And I think a big part of that culture will be getting some of these guys that have like achieved a lot in the past on the team integrated back into the offense, like instead of just being tossed aside. So look for Hunter Renfro to maybe start getting more usage in the next few weeks. Don't know if it'll happen tonight, but he's a guy that, maybe you want to keep him in your player pool tonight to sprinkle in. Other than that, this guy Trey Tucker was getting the work with Hunter Renfro kind of taking the back seat. Like he's been used a little bit more recently. He's been good too. He had 8 points against New England, 4 points against Chicago, like 8 points against the Giants. So he hasn't done anything groundbreaking, but he's been good, like for given the opportunities that he's been given. So Trey Tucker is a guy that you can leave in your player pool too. I wouldn't go too crazy with these cheap guys. I think you want to kind of keep it simple, but at the same time, these cheap guys, if we're looking at DraftKings points being very scarce tonight, then any one of these guys could score, like 5 or 6 DraftKings points and be relevant to the optimal lineup. So just keep that in mind when you're building your lineups tonight. Tonight is the night where you can probably leave salary on the table because the volume guys, might be limited. Like with Adams, I would project him. I would project him honestly to score around 10 DraftKings points, but good contrarian way to go tonight would be to have Adams in the captain. He'd be about half the ownership of Brees or Josh Jacobs, and he obviously has the upside to pay that off. So, depending on your game script, that'll be how you project Adams. But point being is Adams could be outscored tonight by Conlin. Conlin could outscore Adams. Any one of these kickers could outscore Adams. Like the defenses could definitely outscore Adams. So just keep that in mind. Good thing with Adams is you're going to get that guaranteed volume, or at least you're going to probably get some volume with him. We're looking at 7, 7, and 12 as his last 3 weeks of targets. So raw points wise, Adams would have the best shot at scoring those raw points as far as these receivers on the Raiders side. Jacoby Meyers as well, same situation. But let's clear this lineup out and put in the Jets D in the captain spot. We can build a lineup around that. See where we can go with it. Breece Hall, I would want Breece Hall. I want Josh Jacobs. Pretty much, those guys you might as well. I don't know if you say I'd say lock into all lineups, but they'll be at least my highest exposure tonight. So I would recommend taking those guys with the highest projection tonight. Maybe we can get Wilson in this. We can't get Adams in it because we're only left with $100. But if you wanted to go Adams instead of Wilson, you could easily do that too, and maybe get Zerline in there. And the Raiders D. I like putting in 2 Ds tonight. I just think that it's one of those nights where defenses are going to be controlling this game, and kickers. We'll see a lot of kickers. We'll see a lot of defenses. I might put a minimum 2 defense kickers in every lineup. Like if you were setting a MME rule, maybe put the group of both kickers and both defenses and say, like 2 of in every lineup or something like that. Just because of the way that this game is looking to play out. It's going to be an ugly one. If you wanted to get completely different, and we can do that too, let's go with Devonte Adams in the captain. Let's say that this game shoots out, or it's a less of a defensive game, which is highly unlikely, but let's do it. Let's put in Aiden OConnell with him. Let's put in Breece Hall, and let's say Garrett Wilson on the other side. Leaves us with 3,200. You saw some options down here. I like Gibson. Let's say we put in Gibson down there. That leaves us with 3K. Gives you options like Carter, Renfro, Tucker. There are ways to get a realistic lineup in here with putting in all the studs too. So keep that in mind. If we wanted to maybe get rid of Garrett Wilson and put in Josh Jacobs, that leaves us with 1,600. Leaves you with Renfro and Tucker, who both have interesting stories. I think I'd probably lean Renfro. I just have a feeling that they're going to try to get Renfro more integrated into this offense. So just keep him in mind when you're sprinkling in guys into your lineups. But I mean, I think that pretty much covers it. Just look for defense and kickers. Experiment with the captain a little bit. See what you like, and then maybe set your own projections in the optimizer if they're not projecting stud guys that you think are going to underperform correctly, or if you think that the running backs should be higher. Even like with me, I bumped up my running backs. I bumped down the quarterbacks. I bumped down the Devonte Adams. I left Garrett Wilson pretty much the same, but then I bumped up the defenses and I bumped up the kickers. That's going to be a common way to do things tonight. But I just see it as the most realistic way to go. If you want to go different, go for a high-scoring game, because everybody's going to be going for the low-scoring games tonight. And if you do some sort of a shootout build, then that will definitely get you different tonight. So good luck, everybody, and I'll see you on Monday.